Now, before we get on old Pete, let's point out in verse 15 that Peter did follow Jesus with the other disciple. How many disciples do we have? We had 12, right? Well, Iscariot was really a pretender. But it says that only Peter and this other disciple followed him. So before we get on old Pete for denying Christ, hey man, where's the other guys at? So at least he's to this point. Now that disciple, it says the other disciple who is known to the high priest, scholars vary in what they'll say. Some people say that John, being a fisherman and being basically employed by his dad Zebedee had a successful fishing business. Back in that day, salted fish was like a Jewish delicacy, so they'll say, well, maybe John was like, Zebedee's delivery boy to bring the salted fish to the high priest, and maybe that's how they had this relationship. Other scholars submit other people. Doesn't really matter. I'll say maybe it is John here. Maybe it is. And so, but the key is in 17. The servant girl, this bouncer at the door here, you're not one of these man's disciples, are you? This is how it can relate to you. You're not one of those born-againers, are you? Come on, man. You really believe all that stuff? It's interesting. It's easy for Pete when all his homeboys are around. It's a whole different story now when it's him and the rest is the enemy. As it is for you. Easy to go, yeah, I'm in church with a bunch of believers. Yeah, I believe in Jesus. We worship God. This is great. Then you go to work tomorrow, and you're the only believer there. Now what happens? How was church today, big guy? Yesterday, how was it? I just kind of do that, Dangerous ground. Matthew 10:33 says this. Whoever denies me before men, him I also will deny before my Father who's in heaven. Denial is shaky ground, man. The same question was actually asked to Cassie Bernal. And you guys remember the story of Cassie Bernal, do you not? The young lady in the Columbine killing. Let me read this real quick. Do you believe in God? In the wake of the recent, this was years ago, Columbine High School shootings, Cassie Bernal's story has been an encouragement to many. The following is written as Cassie might have told it. My name is Cassie Bernal. I was in the Columbine High School library April 20th, 1999. When two of my classmates held me and my friends hostage with their bullets, bombs, and terror. One of the gunmen thrust a gun into my face and asked, "Do you believe in God?" Before I tell you how I answered, please know that only 2 years before I had been dabbling with black magic. My parents were tipped off when they discovered some letters one of my friends had written to me. That's when they stepped in with tough love. They grounded me for my old friends, made me change schools, and insisted I go to church and youth group. Personally, I think they saved my life. At my youth group, I began to hear about God's love and forgiveness through His Son, Jesus Christ. I discovered that despite the terrible things I'd done or considered doing, Jesus had died for me. And I decided I wanted to give my life to Him. Later, I wrote this. Now I have given up on everything else. I found it to be the only way to know Christ and to experience the mighty power that brought Him to life again, and to find out what it really means to suffer and die with Him. So, whatever it takes, I will be one who lives in the fresh newness of life of those who are alive from the dead. It was in the Columbine Library that I faced my moment of truth. With the gun pointed at my face, I'd been asked to choose between my old life and my new life in Christ with the question, do you believe in God? I took a deep breath and then answered with a clear voice, yes. Why? The gunman asked. Before I could answer, he pulled the trigger, ending my life on earth. How glad I am I stood up for God with my yes My death is in fact my answer to the gunman's final question. Why? For today I am with God. Nothing, and I love this, nothing can take that away from me. Nothing. How about you? What's your answer in that situation? I've tried to put myself in that situation with a gun right in my grill. Now, a gun and friends and haters at school, or that's two different things. But we're talking about the same thing. Are we denying? You'll also notice in verse 18 that Peter stood with them and warmed himself. I will suggest this, an indication that things are going south, perhaps, in your walk with Christ, if you're warming yourself in enemy territory. You're around non-believers and it's all warm and cozy. You're just going along with the flow. I think as a believer, you should feel a little awkward in positions like that around non-believers, not all warm and cuddly. Verse 19. Now the high priest then asked Jesus about his disciples and doctrine. Jesus answered him, I spoke openly to the world. I always taught in the synagogues and in the temple where the Jews always meet. And in secret, I've said nothing. In other words, man, I'm living my life transparently. I've always been right out in the open. I've never hidden and done this underground thing. I brought it real from day one. Verse 21, why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. Indeed, they know what I said. And when he had said these things, one of the officers who stood by struck Jesus with the palm of his hand, saying, do you answer the high priest like that? And Jesus answered him, if I've spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why do you strike me? Then Annas sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest.